Hello everyone, Stretch here from the 72nd Virtual Fighter Wing. I'm currently taking a hiatus from video gaming, but I popped back on for a bit to give you all a quick tutorial on how to use the new stuff in Falcon BMS 4.34. Let's jump right in. I'll start with the new ramp start procedures. For the most part it's all the same, but make sure you move the main power switch all the way to main power. If you leave it in battery, you could get a hung start. More on what a hung start is in a bit. The exterior lighting panel got a facelift, but everything still works the same. Turn on the master light switch with one click to move it all the way to norm. Those covert settings aren't implemented yet. The anti-collision light switch is now a knob that lets you choose different flashing patterns, but the only one we get for now is C, which stands for continuous. Move the knob to C to turn on your anti-smash. The jet fuel starter got a big rework in 4.34. Operation is the same. Flip the switch to start 2, then watch the F-tit and RPM gauges. Once the needle moves north of 20% and the SEC caution light goes out, push the throttle over the detent. Be patient, it takes a while for the JFS to spool up the engine. Now we have an EPU pin that we have to ask ground crew to pull before we can start testing the EPU. Hit T to bring up tower options. Make sure to pull this pin before you run your EPU test on the ground. And if you forget to pull it, no EPU for you when the hits the fan. The DTE page works the same as before, but expect things to take a little longer to load, which is more realistic. Oh, and make sure you set your IFF to standby and turn on your oxygen. Okay, let's rewind and talk more about the JFS. Like I said, you really gotta watch the F-tit and RPM gauges now. You could get a hot start or a hung start, and you need to react accordingly. What's a hung start? It happens when the engine lights off, but RPM fails to rise for some reason. Usually it's because of insufficient ignition, or not enough JFS power, or something like that. If the engine never lights off at all, but instead just motors, that's a no start. In Falcon, you can get a hung start if you leave the main power switch in battery instead of main power, or if you close the canopy during the start, which causes an electrical drain. In Falcon, you can get a no start if you forgot to open the master fuel valve or move the throttle out of cutoff. Even during a hung start, the JFS will continue to run for about 4 minutes until it starts overheating. You'll know it's overheating because the run light will start flashing like this. If this happens, you should put the throttle back in cutoff, stop the JFS, and figure out what went wrong. If you want to try another start, you'll need to ask your crew chief to recharge the start bottle. This takes him about 3 minutes and you will owe your crew chief a case of beer. Once the JFS is recharged, you can start your engine again. If you don't shut down the JFS and allow it to run for about 8 minutes, it will overheat and shut down automatically. The run light will flash even faster, like this. Okay, so that's a hung start. Now what about a hot start? A hot start is what happens when the engine gets fuel too soon. If the engine isn't turning fast enough, it won't stay cool, and if it starts exploding dinosaurs, it will overheat. Important things in the engine can melt. This is why we wait until RPMs are at about 20% before adding the gas, to make sure there's enough airflow to keep the engine from overheating. If you add gas too early in the process by moving the throttle to idle before the SEC light goes out, you'll see your F-tits go up and up. If F-tits go higher than 800 degrees, which is the limit, you'll need to immediately move the throttle back to cutoff to stop the fuel flow. The engine fire light may come on. You can try another start, but first you need to cool the engine down by motoring it. Let the JFS continue to turn the engine over without fuel flow until F-tits drop back below 200 degrees. Then recharge the JFS if you need to and try the start again. There's one other thing that could go wrong during a ramp start, and that's low oil pressure. This doesn't happen because you did something wrong. It's a random chance event. You'll know because the oil pressure needle won't rise. If it happens, just abort the start and try again. Have the chief recharge the JFS if you need to. Okay, so that's it for the new ramp start procedures. Let's move to the new radio stuff. Now, just like in real life, you have to talk to a parade of different controllers as you move to each next phase in your flight. Each of these controllers has their own radio frequency. The good news is your data cartridge comes pre-programmed with every UHF frequency you need. They're arranged in order, so UHF preset 1 is the first frequency you need, and then preset 2, and then 3, and so on. It's called the comms ladder because you climb the ladder, so to speak, as you move from one preset to the next. If you need to load your frequencies manually, you can find the comms ladder on the briefing page. All the frequencies you need are there in the order that you need them. Alright, now let's climb the comms ladder. After you finish your ramp start, you'll be on preset 1, which is base ops. You can use this preset to get the altimeter setting and departure runway. But if you want to be even more realistic, you can tune the ATIS frequency now. ATIS stands for Automated Terminal Information System. It's just a radio frequency that plays a recording of the current weather conditions in an endless loop. The ATIS isn't part of the comms ladder. Go grab it from the mission briefing and dial it in.
Kimpo. Information Lima. Runway 32. Expect visual approach. Wind, 294 degrees, 14 knots, gusts 23. Visibility 10 kilometers or more. Sky conditions, clouds, few 5,000 feet. Temperature, 23 degrees Celsius. Altimeter, 2986 inches.
Okay, so it sounds really crisp for radio broadcast, but it's got the information we need and more. Let's plug in that altimeter setting. Once you're ready to taxi, climb up a rung on the comms ladder and go to preset 2. This is ground control. You can tell them you're ready to taxi by pressing T. They'll tell you which runway to taxi to.
Falcon 1, Singleton, F-16s, request taxi. Good afternoon, Falcon 1, you are number 1 for departure. Taxi and hold short, runway 32 left.
If you or one of your guys has a problem during engine start and they need to back out of their jet, hit T like a million times to get to the contingencies page. Here you can abort specific jets in the flight. Once the bad jet is aborted, the pilot can back out and take another jet if one is available. Make sure you taxi to the correct runway. Tower won't clear you for takeoff until you're at the correct hold short line.
Falcon 1-1, contact tower for takeoff. Switch to 24090.
Once you're at the hold short line, do your final pre-takeoff checks, and don't forget to set your IFF to norm. And now move up a rung to preset 3. This is tower. You can tell them you're ready to depart by pressing T twice.
Falcon 1, Singleton, F-16s, ready for departure.
They may tell you to hold short,
Falcon 1, hold short.
or to position and hold.
Falcon 1, Kimpo Tower, position and hold, runway 32 left.
And then finally they'll let you take off.
Falcon 1, Kimpo Tower, wing 290 at 5 knots, runway 32 left. You are cleared for takeoff. Contact departure.
At first, they won't let you take off until it's your planned takeoff time. If you want to get going early, just request takeoff again. And off we go. Once you're in the climb and cleaned up, switch to button 4 on the UHF. This is departure control. You can tell them you're airborne by pressing T 3 times. They'll give you a departure heading.
Falcon 1, airborne, Singleton, F-16s, 1000. Falcon 1, Kimpo approach, depart heading 285.
At this point, you're done with the civilian portion of ATC. You can switch to AWACS on button 6 if you want. Coming back home, we first check in with the approach controller. They are on preset 7 UHF. Notice how there's a bunch of options now for how we can approach the airport. We have 2 options where Tower will give us vectors, either vectors for a visual approach or vectors for an instrument approach. And we have 2 options where Tower will shut up and leave us alone, the unrestricted approach and the overhead. Since I'm a single ship, I'm going to ask for the unrestricted approach.
Falcon 1-1, F-16, 20 miles, northeast, 15,000, inbound for landing. Good afternoon, Falcon 1-1, Kimpo approach. You're cleared all the way in for flight landing. Runway 32 right, welcome back. QH2986.
Approach will then switch you to Tower. Climb the ladder again to preset 8.
Falcon 1-1, contact tower for landing. Switch to 24090. Falcon 1, F-16 inbound for landing.
Falcon 1, Kimpo Tower. Continue inbound for runway 32 right. Need contact on final.
Tower may clear you to land, or they may ask you to report on final. If they do, hit T twice once you turn final and let them know to get your landing
Falcon
clearance.
1 on final.
Falcon 1, Kimpo Tower. Wing 320 at 8 knots. Runway 32 right. Cleared for landing. Check gear down.
Only the flight lead needs to let Tower know when the flight is on final. If you want, you can request a formation landing instead. This is for human pilots who want to land as a formation flight. Okay, let's rewind and try this again as an overhead.
Gamble 1-1, two-shift F-16s, 10 miles, east, 5,000, inbound for landing. Good afternoon, Gamble 1-1, Jeonju approach. You're cleared all the way in for flight landing, runway 23 right. Welcome back. QH2986.
It's really the same as the unrestricted approach, except now you fly 1,500 feet overhead the runway at 300 knots. Once you're midfield, hit T twice, then announce your brake.
1, brake right.
Brake onto the downwind. Only the flight lead should call the brake. And let's rewind once more and try this again as an instrument approach. ATC may force you to use an instrument approach if the weather isn't good enough for anything else.
Falcon 1-1, F-16, 15 miles, northwest, 10,000. Request radar vector approach.
Good afternoon, Falcon 1-1, Kimpo approach. Welcome back. Vectors to radar approach. Runway 14 left. QH2919.
Altitude.
Falcon 1-1, turn left heading 165. Descend to 4,000.
Approach control will start giving you vectors that match up with an instrument approach.
Falcon 1-1, turn left heading 140. Hold 2,000. Vectors to final. Runway 14 left.
As long as you follow their instructions, you'll be flying the instrument approach as charted on the plate. They'll hand you off to Tower at some point for your landing clearance.
Falcon 1-1, maintain final approach course 145. Check speed. Falcon 1-1, contact Tower, done final. Switch to 40900.
Okay, one way or another, you're going to land and roll off the runway. When you do, you'll be handed off to ground control.
Falcon 1-1, contact ground. Switch to 36700.
They're the top rung of the comms ladder on UHF button 9. Just hit T and let them know that you'd like to taxi back to the ramp.
Falcon 1-1, request taxi back. Falcon 1-1, taxi to the ramp. Welcome back.
And you're done. There's one other thing that's different about comms now, and that's aerial refueling. You have to know the tanker's frequency and be on the tanker's frequency to request fuel from them. You can get the tanker frequency from WDP or by asking AWACS for a vector to the tanker.
Chalice 1, Falcon 1-1, request vector to tanker. Falcon 1, Chalice 1, tanker, Texaco 1, bullseye 19058, Pacan channel, United Yankee. Falcon 1, Chalice 1, tanker, Texaco 1, uniform 29345.
Once you're on frequency, you still need to be within 12 miles and behind the tanker to request fuel.
Texaco 1-1, Falcon 1-1, request clearance to refuel. Falcon 1, Chalice 1, tanker, Texaco 1, bullseye 20056, Pacan channel, United Yankee.
But once you're behind the tanker and within 12 miles, go ahead and make your refuel request.
Texaco 1-1, Falcon 1-1, request clearance to refuel.
Falcon 1-1, Texaco 1-1, copy. Falcon 1-1, Texaco 1-1, you are cleared to pre-contact position.
Everything else is the same as it was before.
Contact.
And one more minor change. Now when the CNI switches in backup, the UHF page of the DED now shows you the backup UHF frequency. You have to use the backup controls to change the UHF frequency still. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, IFF. This is all new in 4.34. I'm going to start with the theory. But before I do, it's important I say that BMS will automatically set up your data cartridge with the correct IFF codes. You normally don't have to fiddle with anything to get IFF to work, but it's still very important to understand what's going on under the hood, so we're going to talk about it. IFF is a two-person dance. Airplane 1 has an IFF interrogator that sends out an interrogation. Airplane 2 has an IFF transponder that responds to the interrogation. Airplane 1 then figures out if Airplane 2's response is valid, and it uses that to help guess if Airplane 2 is a friend or a foe. Your F-16 has both an IFF interrogator and a transponder, and you need to know how to use both of them. IFF operates in one of 5 modes, Mode 1 through Mode 5. Mode 5 isn't implemented in BMS yet, so we're just going to deal with Modes 1 through 4 only. IFF Modes 1, 2, and 3 are all just numeric codes. When a transponder gets a Mode 1 IFF interrogation, it just responds with a number. Same with Mode 2 and Mode 3. IFF Mode 1 numbers are assigned to a team, like Team USA or Team South Korea. It's a 2-digit number, like 10. For security reasons, these 2-digit numbers are changed every hour. IFF Mode 2 numbers are assigned to a specific jet. It's a 4-digit number that never changes. Most aircraft have their Mode 2 numbers hard-coded, but the F-16 is so special that it can change its Mode 2 code. IFF Mode 3 numbers are used by civilian ATC in the real world. They're not really used in BMS, so the Mode 3 transponder is generally turned off. IFF Mode 4 is an encrypted mode. It's the only one that the enemy can't fool by just guessing the right number. Rather than using numbers, IFF Mode 4 uses encrypted keys. IFF Mode C is altitude reporting. It's used by civilian ATC to read your altitude. Again, not used in BMS. And IFF Mode 5 is also encrypted, but it includes lots of helpful data, like what weapons you have, what target you're looking at, and more. All of this is given back to the interrogator when the response is transmitted. It's not really used in BMS yet, sadly. Okay, so how does this work in the jet? Like I said, your team is assigned a 2-digit Mode 1 code. This code changes every hour. If you want to be seen as friendly, you better program the right 2-digit Mode 1 code for each hour that you're in the air. If you look at the briefing page, you can see the IFF plan. This row here shows you which Mode 1 code to use for each hour of the day. Up here you see we start initially with the Mode 1 code 10, and then at 1300 hours we would change it to 12. The enemy would be none the wiser. As you can see, we also have a Mode 2 code, 5210, and that never changes. And we have a rotating Mode 3 code, but again, Mode 3 is a civilian system and it's not really used in BMS. You can see that here, the modes active are 1, 2, and 4, but not 3. Since Mode 4 uses encrypted keys, you can't just type in the number. Instead, the jet has space in its memory for 2 Mode 4 codes, labeled A and B. As you can see, we're going to be using key A starting at midnight on day 2, and then key B starting at midnight on day 3. And lo and behold, down here at the time matrix, it's key A, all the way through until 2400 hours when we switch to key B. Okay, so like I said, this is all done automatically for you. Your data cartridge will come preloaded with all the right IFF codes and even the correct times to change them. You won't have to change a thing. All you need to do is turn on the IFF during your startup, and that's it. But what if your data cartridge is wrong, or there's a change of plans? You should know how to do this stuff manually. So let's go back and plug in all this stuff from the briefing page by hand. Start by hitting the IFF button on the upfront controls. If you type a 2-digit number into the scratch pad, it sets your Mode 1 code. To change our Mode 2 code, we type the number 2 and then the 4-digit number. Type a 4-digit number and you set your Mode 3 code. To turn on our Mode 1 transponder, we just type 1 enter. 2 enter to turn on our Mode 2 transponder. And surprise, 4 enter to turn on our Mode 4 transponder. If we wanted to switch between key A and key B, we could hit 6 enter, like it says in parentheses there. Now, Mode 4 is important. It's the only type of IFF that the enemy can't spoof. So if someone sends you a Mode 4 interrogation and you don't reply, that could be bad news for you. It could result on some blue and blue. So it's important that you know when you're not replying to someone else's Mode 4 interrogation. And so on the IFF page, you can hit 7 enter to toggle between different warnings. Light mode means that the number 4 in your DED homepage lights up anytime someone sends you a mode 4 interrogation. Audio mode is the same as light mode, but you also get a tone whenever someone sends you a mode 4 interrogation that you're not responding to. Your jet will not respond to mode 4 interrogations unless the other guy interrogating you has the same encrypted key as you do. If you hear the tone, it means that one of the two of you has the wrong key. But hey, we're not done yet. Remember, we can program in those time changes as well. Because if 1300 hours rolls around and we're in the middle of a dogfight, we're not going to remember to change our mode 1 IFF code. So let's get that set up in advance too. Dauber sequence twice to get to the time page. We want to switch the mode 1 code to 12 at 1300 hours. So type 12 into the scratch pad and hit enter. It's 2 digits only, so the jet knows that it's a mode 1 code. Dauber down and enter 1300. That's it. At 1300 hours, our mode 1 code will change to 12 automatically. There's one other cool feature of the IFF page, and that's the pause subpage. So you know how you can program your Mavericks to automatically turn on once you pass a certain point? Like say north of steer point 2 or east of steer point 3 or whatever? Well, you can do the same thing with IFF. Let's dauber back over to the pause page and take a look. Let's say we wanted to toggle mode 1 and mode 3 once we pass north of steer point 3. We start by typing 1 enter and then 3 enter into the scratch pad. Now mode 1 and mode 3 are armed. Now we dauber down. We hit 2 to mean north and then 3 for steer point 3. Now when we pass north of steer 3, mode 1 and mode 3 will toggle. If they're on, they'll turn off. If they're off, they'll turn on. Why would we want to do this? Well, IFF gives away your position. Remember, mode 1 is just a 2-digit code. It's easy to guess. And the enemy could be sending out IFF interrogations. Your transponder is going to reply, and that reply will give up your position. Maybe you don't want this. So it might be smart to turn off your mode 1 transponder as you cross the fence. But you might want to leave your mode 4 on, since the enemy can't spoof that. IFF has some backup controls as well. If you put the CNI switch in backup, you'll have to use them. You can set your mode 1 code, and you can set the first 2 digits of your mode 3 code. You can enable or disable mode 1 and mode 3 with this switch. And you can switch mode 4 between key A and key B, or turn it off. And you can turn on and off the audio warning. Meanwhile, the only thing the IFF page on your DED will say is backup. You can also put the IFF into emergency mode. If you do that, your mode 1, mode 2, and mode 3 transponders will be set to a special emergency code. In real life, this is the way that ATC can tell you're in trouble. In BMS, it's not really useful, but it's there. And lastly, you can put the IFF into low mode as well. This reduces the amount of power that the IFF produces, which reduces the range at which you will respond to interrogations. Good for responding to interrogations from nearby aircraft without giving away your position to further enemies. Okay, so that was a lot of talk about the IFF transponder. But what about if you want to make an IFF interrogation? I bet you want to know how to tell friend from foe, right? Well, let's learn that now. The IFF interrogator is easy to use. On the radar page, just hit a TMS left to do a scan interrogation. This sweeps the entire radar azimuth. As you can see, it's doing a mode 4 interrogation first, then a mode 2, and lastly a mode 1. Each time it gets a reply, it plots the reply on the radar scope. Green for a friendly reply, yellow for unknown. The little number inside the shape indicates what IFF mode the reply is for. If you want to scan just a small section of the radar, do a line of sight interrogation by pressing and holding TMS left. Now we can interrogate just these guys over here without alerting these other guys of our presence. So, what are we seeing here when we do the interrogation? Let's first take a look at this group here. I happen to already know that these guys are friendly. When we pressed TMS left, it did 3 interrogations, mode 4, mode 2, and mode 1. First, it did the mode 4 interrogation. Remember, everyone on the same team has the same mode 4 code, so the mode 4 interrogation comes back friendly, just like we'd expect. Next, it did a mode 2 interrogation. Remember, every aircraft has a unique mode 2 code, So if you're doing a Mode 2 interrogation, unless that aircraft specific code matches the code you're interrogating for, it's going to come back as a bogey. And that's exactly what happens. So a Mode 2 interrogation is actually pretty useless unless you're looking for one specific guy. And lastly, it did the Mode 1 interrogation. Mode 1 is also shared by the whole team, so the Mode 1 came back friendly. So as you can see, these chicks came back as friendly for Mode 1, bogey for Mode 2, and friendly for Mode 4. So you do have to turn on your brain a bit to understand these IFF replies. Now what about this group out here? These are bad guys. How did they respond to our IFF interrogation? Looks like they didn't respond at all. And why would they? They're North Korean. They don't have American transponders on their aircraft. So obviously they're not going to reply to our IFF interrogation. So we don't see anything. No reply at all means they're bogeys, and we can be pretty sure they're not friendly. Or maybe they are friendly, but their transponder is broken. You can never be too careful. Right now, the code we're interrogating with is the same as the code we're replying with, and the modes we're interrogating with are the same as the modes we're replying with. But we can program our interrogator differently from our transponder if we want. To do that, hit List and then Recall to go to the interrogator page on the DED. The interrogator and the transponder start out decoupled. If you hit 9 Enter, you can couple them, meaning that the codes you program into the transponder automatically get programmed into the interrogator too. Watch, I'll go to the IFF page and change my Mode 1 code from 10 to 11. Now when I go back to the interrogator page, the interrogator is now scanning for code 11 as well. If I type 1 Enter, I turn on Mode 1 interrogation. Now, if I type 10 Enter into the interrogator page, I've changed the Mode 1 interrogator to scan for code 10. But my transponder will still reply to other people's scans with code 11. My interrogator will only say another aircraft is friendly if its Mode 1 code is 10, even though my Mode 1 code is 11. And if you look down here where it used to say all, now it says some, meaning the interrogator and transponder are no longer fully coupled. If I type 9 Enter again, I decouple the transponder and interrogator entirely, and now changing my IFF code will not change the interrogator at all. Now down here on the MFD it says M+. That tells me when I hit TMS left it's going to do multiple kinds of interrogations. Remember on the DED we had enabled Mode 1, Mode 2, and Mode 4. And if I hit TMS left it does all of those, starting with Mode 4. I can press this OSB and cycle through different interrogation modes quickly though. Maybe I just want to do a Mode 4 interrogation and I don't want to mess with the DED. Easy. Just press this OSB until it says Mode 4 and then run your scan. It scans only Mode 4. The HSD displays IFF replies too. You can turn this off in the control page if you want by toggling AIFF. Alright, you're now an IFF expert. So between the JFS changes, the new radio system, and the IFF, that covers the really big changes in BMS 4.34. There's a couple of smaller changes too, so let me run down the list. Engine failures are much more robust now. Watch the hydraulic pressure plummet, get a fuel leak, or maybe F-tits will spike. Anything can happen now once you take battle damage. You might want to get in the habit of doing battle damage checks with your wingman. He'll be able to tell what you're leaking based on the stuff coming out of the back of your jet, what color it is, and where it's coming from. Chin pods are now treated like any other weapon. Find it in the list and click to load. If you need a TGP or an HTS, this is where to find it now. Sidewinders no longer magically lock up whatever you're tracking on radar. The seeker head will look in the same direction, but that doesn't mean it's looking at the exact same target. You need to uncage your Sidewinder and let it track on its own. Watch the diamond, make sure it's tracking the right target, and then fire. Laser-guided bombs are more realistic now, so you need to adjust your laser timing. Use 10 to 12 seconds now for Paveway 2s with their bang-bang steering. For Paveway 3s and for moving targets, turn off auto-laze and manually laze the target instead. The fuel gauges are no longer magic. You could run out of gas before the needle reaches empty. If you get really low, even a little negative G could cause a flameout. Don't be that guy and try to land with 200 pounds left in the tank. If you have a flameout, you can only use the JFS below 20,000 feet and 400 knots. If you're too fast, slow down. If you're too high, glide down. Hypoxia is modeled now. Don't forget to turn on your oxygen. If you have a canopy light and you're not wearing your oxygen mask, you will begin to lose consciousness at higher altitudes. Eventually, you'll black out. SAMs now have search radars and tracking radars. This F stands for flat face, which is the search radar for an SA-3. You won't see the 3 until you get a lot closer, and it turns on the tracking radar. Remember, the rings indicate scariness, not distance, which is why the F and the 3 are in different places. You can launch a harm at the F and kill the search radar if you want, but that just means the tracking radar will turn on to pick up the slack. SAM operators are trickier now too. They'll turn off their radar more to keep you from launching a harm. The audio-visual tape recorder switch is different now, but it still works the same, it's just stupider. The event mark position is the same as auto in 4.33. It records 30 seconds every time you laze, pickle, or fire guns. The record position is the same as on, and the unthread position is the same as off. And there's no helpful green light to let you know when it's recording anymore. Remember those nice backup IFF controls? Well, they bumped the backup TACAN controls off that panel. What's a backup-loving guy to do? Well, head right to the TACAN page on the MFD. There you can set the TACAN mode, cycle between channels, type in a channel number, and toggle between the X and Y bands, just like you can on the DED. You get a visor mask now. It's like sunglasses, but it fits over your helmet. Hit Alt-V to toggle a visor and keep the sun out of your eyes. Hey, did you notice the MFDs are all weirdly colorful now? If you don't like the new groovy color scheme, just follow the white rabbit over to the avionics configurator, where you can change the color settings. The parking brake is on by default now whenever you do a takeoff or taxi start, so there's no need to hold down the brake pedals when you're in pies. But don't forget to turn off your parking brake before you start to taxi. There's a few more sections of the DTC configurator in the map view now. Along with the IFF stuff we saw earlier, there's also pages now for your weapon steer points and your precision steer points. All right, my fellow Falcon drivers, you made it through. Now you know how to fly in 4.34. I bet that IFF stuff left your head spinning, and if it did, don't worry. Just rewind and watch it all again. You'll get it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it enjoyable. Like I said, I fly with the 72nd Virtual Fighter Wing at 72ndvfw.org. You can also listen to my aviation podcast at avfax.org or see my other Falcon videos at youtube.com/riscfuture. Good hunting.